Hello everyone, Prime here, and I hope that you've enjoyed your day, because today we're going to be going over the Slavic Pantheon. In the beginning, there was nothing save for the old dark. But thanks to the powers of the supreme god, Rod, the world egg containing the first god, Savrong, was spawned into the cosmos. The shell cracked, revealing light covered by Savrong, who cast his very own shadow, which spawned another god, Chernobog. Savrong's glare spawned yet another god, Wodan, god of the sea. Also, the waters that make up the middle realm of the egg was also spawned. From the very top of the shell, dust and, shall we say, particles that collected there eventually glittered down and spawned an ash tree, which separated the three realms of the Slavic mythology. So you've got the top level, the heavens, the middle level being the earth, and the bottom level being the underworld. Savrong used fire to bring life to all inhabitants of the earth. With this fire, the sun, and perhaps even the moon, was also created. The bottom of the shell spawned humans, and the creatures, i.e. the animals and the different life of the earth. So when I said Savrong used fire to bring life to the inhabitants of the earth, I meant life such as plant life. So this was generally considered to be the Slavic creational myth. However, this was not the only Slavic mythology creational myth. You see, the Slavic creator god commands another god in another creational myth, or it could have been a creature, or in fact the devil himself, to deliver sand or mud that resided in the primordial ocean. So once this sand or mud was collected from the waters, it was used to fashion the earth, the lands that we live on. Now, in some variations of the myth, it was an amphibian creature, a bird, or perhaps even the creator deity himself. Now, whether this creator deity is Rod, Savrong, or another god entirely, I'm not too sure. In fact, this myth is a lot more vague and scarcely mentioned than the other myth I told you about, which is why I'm assuming that the first myth that I mentioned is more of an accepted myth, or was more of an accepted myth, because it's a lot more fleshed out and easier to find. Eastern Europe, Slavic peoples divided their beliefs into different subgroups. Eastern Slavs, generally places such as Russia and Ukraine. West Slavs, so Polish and Czech. Southern Slavs, Bulgarian and Serbian. Of course, with these different sort of locations of people who follow the Slavic Pantheon, there are a few variations in some of the myths and beliefs among these different people. So I'm assuming that's why there's going to be different versions of stories told, maybe other reasons for that as well. Unlike the Voodoo pantheon, not much information has survived as to how the Slavic gods were worshipped by the specific peoples. Historians agree that the gods were worshipped, but information regarding how this was carried out, whether that be through prayers, rituals, and so on, differed immensely between Slavic tribes, as all a mystery to us. That said, Christian writers have detailed practices of making human sacrifices to the gods, such as Perun, the thunder god, and these practices and ideas of such practices aren't dismissed by other historians and scholars. So the Slavic people may have routinely made, or from time to time, made the good old human sacrifice, which is interesting to think about at the very least. So moving on to some gods now, do you remember the Halloween special that I did a few months ago for last year, in which I talked about being or spirit that would, someone who is using the toilet, what type of paper they'd like? Well, in Slavic mythology, there's a version of this deity or spirit that's a lot less sinister and painful. Instead of a toilet spirit, we have a bathhouse spirit, and the third sort of area or, cubicle of the bathhouse was always left specifically for this deity or being. It was a demonic god, and it's called the Bannik. The Bannik would often summon its sort of friends and companions whilst it was enjoying its time in the bath, and it also had the ability to hide itself in the steams of the bathhouses. Any sort of Christian imagery or Christian talk had to be hidden or masked away, whilst the Bannik used the bathhouses because its guests could be offended by such imagery, and the Bannock turned violent if this was to be the case. Also, Slavic peoples tried to avoid bathing alone, and if a woman was to give birth whilst in one of these bathhouses, then extra protection and surveillance was placed under the woman and her child whilst she was still in the bathhouse. A person may also present their exposed back in a half-opened door, and Bannock would either gently rub this person's back if all was well and there was no problems, or he would violently scratch at the person's back if they weren't about to have the most nice time, or there was something wrong with them, which sounds a bit rude, but yeah. In this way, he could predict the future. Now, while Savrong was considered to be a solar deity, he was not the only one. Dazbong, or Dabog, was also a solar deity and god of rain, and because of the fact that the sun and rain were two very core, very important parts of human life, or things that were used to sustain human life, he was considered to be a very important god to the ancient Slavic people. However, because of the duality of fire, it not only has the ability to help sustain life, helping the Slavic people to feed themselves, keep themselves warm in the cold, it also has the ability to, unfortunately, slay men. And as such, because it has the power to take men to the underworld, Dazbog was also considered to be a deity of the underworld. Of course, Savrong was already mentioned here, and really I just wanted to talk about another cool deity that could be added into Smite, so here we go. Other than what I've mentioned, I don't really have too much to say on him, other than he could be cool, but hey, there wasn't too much information to go off on Artio, and I'm honestly surprised that they chose to put Artio in the game over a lot of other Celtic gods, but Iris does whatever they want, so there you go. And now we're going to be talking about the goddess Marzana. Now, she was a goddess that I got a few requests to talk about, so it just felt right to include her in the video. Some of her alternative names could have been Mara or Mor, and she was depicted as either a young goddess, a middle-aged woman, or in fact, an older woman. We'll get into the reasons for some of these differences in depictions in a sec. But in all of them, she usually had pale skin. She was dressed in either mostly white clothing or completely black clothing. So there's that. She was also a patron deity of winter and eventually the underworld. She used to be a goddess of fertility, but the myths were changed in order to turn her into a bit of a villain, I suppose? And she apparently also allied herself with another god of the underworld, Veles, and Veles being one of the more significant foes of Perun, the thunder god. She's connected to the Baba Yaga, who was a witch who lived in a forest, and she flew around on a mortar with a pestle. Now, the witch probably isn't the most pleasant thing to look at, and Marzana may have either created the witch or may in fact transform into the witch. Whether there's definitely one or the other, I'm not too sure, but that's how the myths tend to go. Because Marzana was also responsible for disease and other unfortunate ailments, Slavic peoples thought that by burning effigies of Marzana annually, they could sort of drive off these ill effects and have more enjoyable lives. Some variations of this tradition, though, say that the effigy was thrown into a river on the first day of spring. But there you go, that's Marzana for you. And with that said, that's pretty much all I have for you guys. I hope that you enjoy this video though, and if you did, go ahead and leave a like. And of course, subscribe to the channel for more content. So, uploads for next week might be a bit, following the tradition of being a bit pushed back. Just because there's just a few things that I've got to get ready for next week for uni stuff, but after next week, hopefully I can have a more consistent upload process, back to how it was last year. And until the next video, have a very, very good day. I have been Prime, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.